fair few struggles on there. The first one being obviously the tiredness. That was quite extraordinary.
But that was to be expected, I think.
Yeah, well, surprisingly, once I'd had that sort of break in the morning, it had gone. Like, I wasn't tired anymore. Especially that Friday night. I thought Friday night I'd be stuffed playing FC24, and I thought I actually held up quite well.
Yeah.
Hang on, I've got to sneeze. Okay. Every time I do this, I turn the mic back on, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And then I go, ugh, and it all comes out. But it doesn't seem to be. The other big thing was the amount I actually needed to go to the toilet.
Right.
Was actually quite shocking. Like, I was having to get up and go to the toilet quite regularly.
How many energy drinks were you going through?
I think I only went through 2 for the day.
Yeah, okay.
I think I had the first one about 10, 11 o'clock the first night. And then I think I had the second one at like 7 a.m. that morning.
Right.
And then might have had one again Friday night. After I'd had... Oh, no, because I didn't have tea, because I was trying to make up the couple of hours of... when I had to go and sort some stuff out. And, yeah, so I think I only had 2. Might have been 3. But then, obviously, by the time we sort of got to... What was it, about lunchtime on the Friday, I started drinking. And admittedly, I didn't go through many. Like, I only had, like, 7 or 8 from then until, what was it, like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
On the Saturday. But that also seemed to, like, help and keep me awake. Normally, I was kind of hesitant on having a couple of drinks, because I was like, well, the last thing I want to do is start drinking and be like, oh, and, you know, pass out, and that'd be the end of that. So, but yeah, I think they were the 2 main struggles that we sort of had trying to get through it. Obviously, we also had the issue with sound that we just couldn't work out. I don't know what the hell was going on there. We'd seem to fix it, and then the next person would come on chat and be like, "Hang on, what's going on with your sound?" Well, we thought that we'd fixed this.
Yeah, but I think it's just like you were playing so many different games, and some of those games are really loud.
Yeah,
and you've got to go through each game and like turn the volume down in each of them to be able to hear your voice through the stream, which is pretty frustrating.
And getting a copyright claim as well was...
So what was that about? Have you figured that out?
I've literally only just seen it on YouTube then. So for about... It comes in right at the start of one of the 3 videos we did onto YouTube. And it says that it was Amnesia by M83.
Right.
And it goes for about 1.5 minutes at the start of the video. No idea. I didn't have any
music
music
were you
playing.
playing then?
I don't know, because I don't know which one of the videos it actually was. So I'm gonna have to do a bit of a look into it once we're finished here and work it out. So, because that's
I wonder
worrying.
if like starting one of the games up, if there was music playing over the like opening cutscenes of the game or something that's copyrighted. For example, like maybe Payday has that. I can't remember, but a game like that, they usually have opening cutscenes and there's music playing over.
Yeah, well, it does say it was the start, and Payday was the first one that we played.
Yeah.
Maybe it was FC24, but I don't think so because I've got all music turned off on that for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else did I play? Fortnite. Fortnite, there wasn't anything. And I had to tell Sid a couple of times not to play music and sing. But others said that they couldn't hear it. So there's that. What else did I play? Maybe the start of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. I guess this just goes to show how hard it is sometimes to be a streamer and make a living.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't get anything from Twitch. Twitch haven't given me any strikes. Haven't given me any notifications to say that there's been any copyright on that. So YouTube obviously a lot stricter. We'll wait and see where it goes from there. I did send you that stuff, didn't I? Yep. So this week I thought we would lean into an article I found while I was trying to do some research on something I had in mind for this week's episode, which I'll tell you what it was. But I was trying to find more games that were like that have released over the top of the original.
Yeah.
Like Counter-Strike 2's just done, like Overwatch 2 did, and what we thought about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do some research to find some other games that have done very similar things, because they're the only two that I could think of. Trying to word it at 12 o'clock at night was probably not the best idea. Because I couldn't find anything, and it kept coming up with all these different things online, and I came across this article, and I thought, oh, you know what, this will make a good little segment. So it's from Digital Trends. It's by Gabe Gerwin and Joseph Yaden. It was in November 3rd, 2021, so it's a couple of years old. But it is the most underrated games of all time. Now, I thought it's pretty recent enough that it's not really gonna have had too many games added to it over the last couple of years. But my thought was we'll go through this list, talk about the games that they've got on here, and we can probably add games that we believe should be on this list, and verify whether we think these games should be there or not. So the first one on this list, I should probably actually talk about the first bit, shouldn't I? So it starts off with this. There's a slew of fantastic games out there that get their fair share of recognition. Titles like Red Dead Redemption 2, Resident Evil 2, and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild come to mind. But what about the games that arguably don't get the recognition they deserve? These are the games that maybe flew under the radar, didn't sell as well as their publisher had hoped, leaving them mostly forgotten by the community. So they've got 28 games on this list. They then go on to say, in this list we'll highlight some games that don't get the credit they deserve, whether they feature an interesting gameplay mechanic, engaging story, or something else that makes them stand out. These are the most underrated games of all time across multiple generations. So they start off with Vampire. This came out on the PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Now, admittedly, I did hear a lot of good things about this, but actually skipped it myself.
Yeah, I'm the same. So I don't want to talk too much negative or positive stuff about games that I haven't played, but I did hear good things about this too.
Yeah. Now, it did come from the studios that gave us Life is Strange. So I thoroughly enjoyed those games. So I'd imagine that this would be a very interesting one. Um,
Yep.
but from what I remember about the game, having not played it myself, obviously, it did seem to fly under the radar.
Yeah, definitely.
I know it has been pushed through sales, especially around Halloween, that type of thing, on PlayStation and Xbox a few times, so it obviously holds up pretty well.
Mm. Hmm.
So I'd like to say this probably, without playing it, belongs on this list.
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
fact that we haven't played
So
it probably says that it belongs on this list.
I I think too, in a lot of discussions that people have about stuff that's underrated, they start to turn it into a discussion about what's good and what's not good, and
Yeah,
that's not really what it's about. Like underrated just means that it's better than it was given credit for, or than
yeah,
its
true.
success or lack of success suggests.
Yeah,
So it doesn't necessarily have to be great to be underrated.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's
It
true.
can it can just be that people expected it to be rubbish and it was all
Really good.
right.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So the next one was The Surge, which came out on Xbox One, PS4, and PC. Now this is from the guys that brought you Lords of the Fallen, which is, pretty much Souls-like game. Um, yeah. Again, I mean, I'm not big on the Souls style games,
Yeah.
so I skipped over this one, even though it did look quite good. But I mean, I actually, to be honest with you, don't remember all that much about it. I
It's
don't.
probably a good it's probably a good sign for this list if some of these games are games that totally flew under your radar,
Yeah.
because it means they're probably right. That they probably were underrated in a way because you never even picked up on them and they do look okay. So
Yeah. And I actually wouldn't mind going to check this out. They do say here that there is a limb targeting system, unique upgrades to an exosuit, and an industrial setting. So it did sort of make it stand out from, your Bloodborns, your Elysium, and the other Souls like games. So, I might go check this one out.
hmm
Could be interesting. The next one on the list, The Evil Within 2. Now, I
yeah.
remember the first one coming out.
hmm
I went to EB Games Expo, and they had this, like, massive, kind of like haunted house type thing.
Yeah.
And they had people chasing you. Like, real people were in there dressed up as, like, the characters and stuff, and, like,
Yeah.
chasing you out of there and,
Yeah.
like, trying to scare the crap out of you. Like, it was unreal. Absolute, like, horrifying stuff.
hmm
Did I lend you my first copy, or was that a different game?
I don't think so. Yeah.
I remember playing through the first one, and it was unreal. And I think I picked up the second one, and it felt a lot weirder, and it felt different. Didn't have all the, I want to say jagged edges, like it felt more polished. It felt more put together with a real sense of where they wanted to be different from the first game. Does that make sense?
Similar to Resident Evil 2 versus the first one, I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah, very much so. And you know, I thought the first game was very, very good. And the second game, although I didn't finish it, because I think it came out around the same time as a few big releases that drew me in a bit more, I thoroughly enjoyed the game. But I think, despite the first one doing well, I felt like it may have turned people off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's maybe why the second one didn't do as well.
Right.
And yeah, I thought, this game really, really had the chance to do something great sales wise, and unfortunately it didn't. Let's just have a quick gander and see what they gave their review, because they did a review of this game over at Digital Trends. They gave it a 4 out of 5. So,
And you'd agree with that?
yeah, I definitely agree with that. It was well worth the play. It was just that whole, like I said, the reason I never finished it, as I do with a lot of games, ADHD kicks in, someone else grabbed my attention, bang, went to someone else.
The next two games, I will admit to, have never even heard of.
The next one I have, but only because I've seen it on the PlayStation Store.
Right.
And that's Next Machina, which is PS4 and PC release.
Next Machina, right?
Oh, Machina, yeah. You know what? I had that in my head, and then it came out Machina. What the hell? What the actual hell? It's a twin stick arcade shooter, and I think that might have been why I've seen it on the PlayStation Store, because I was a very big Resogun player.
Yeah. I also tend to have a lot of that genre of games in the game catalog.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if this one is, but those sorts of games.
There's a possibility that that's also where I may have seen it. But I know when you sort of go, when you go onto a game and or you go into the store and it gives you games based on ones that you've played.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, playing a lot of Resogun, I'm pretty sure this game had come up.
Yeah.
Who did this? Developed in collaboration with legendary designer Eugene Jarvis. It's House Marquee. Oh, wow.
Right.
Which I think... Were House Marquee the ones that did... I have a feeling they're actually the ones that did Resogun as well.
Right.
So that may be why that has popped up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just pulling up their page now. So they're the ones that did Dead Nation that we played a bit of.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, and they made Resogun.
Mm-hmm.
4 years before they did Next Machina, which this game then declared them, or made them declare that, arcade is dead. And then they went on to make Returnal, which had huge success on PlayStation.
Yeah.
So, look, this definitely flew under the radar for me. I think it belongs on this list. If it plays anything like Resogun, or fits into that arcade style, I'm definitely gonna pick this up. And it's amazing, sometimes doing things like this with a bit of research, you learn things about developers and different games, and
Yeah, absolutely.
you might find a game that is what's the way to put it, one of your favourite games, or new favourite games. Now, this one I definitely haven't heard of, but it actually looks quite interesting from that picture. Super Daryl Deluxe for PS4, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Design. I'll read you what they've written because they know more than obviously what we do. Designed preliminarily by just two people, Super Daryl Deluxe is a Metroidvania game by the way of Napoleon Dynamite. Set in a high school where different classrooms lead to a fantastical world, the game stars the completely silent titular hero who must venture into the unknown in order to prevent total chaos. The game's strength lies not only in its gorgeous artwork and music, but its often hilarious writing. It has jokes about everything from Georgia O'Keeffe to Genghis Khan, all told with sharp wit and a knack for wordplay. Super Daryl Deluxe does not try to reinvent what it means to be an action platforming game, but it does deliver one fantastic take on the template. And look, from the picture they've shown, it looks really interesting. It looks like it's already chaotic.
Yeah.
Even though you're trying to stop a chaos from happening.
Yeah.
I'd be very interested in this. I'm slightly disappointed that this probably didn't get a bit of a push.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's got it's got a really kind of interesting cartoon art style that I think a lot of people would enjoy its sort of humor and approach to comedy.
You know what it reminds me of? A cross between two things. The TV show Doug.
Yeah.
Has that art style. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, but do you remember the old 7-Up ads where they had like the cartoon?
I think so, yeah.
It's got that very cartoony art style, that very kind of late 80s, early 90s kind of comic / cartoon young teen or young adult sort of vibe to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, I'm interested. Again, I agree with it being on this list because we've never heard of it.
Yeah.
So, now the first of the big ones is next. Now, before we go into this, I totally agree with this being on the list.
Yeah, I think purely for the fact that people probably didn't expect this one to be a good one.
Yeah, and I think it dropped away a lot because of the previous release in the series.
Yes. Yeah,
because that
and also
that
when people talk about some of the best games from this series, they don't ever think of this one. No,
definitely not. And yet it is probably one of the better ones. We are... I know I spoke about it the other day about doing a stream on this series. I'm just wondering if we try and work out a way of doing it as a group sort of thing. But the game is Assassin's Creed Syndicate for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. The game that we were talking about that released the year before that obviously did not go too well was Assassin's Creed Unity. It was massively broken. And obviously being in that early era of social media and where things were starting to pick up with memes and advertising and all that sort of thing. Assassin's Creed Unity just cops so much stick. And then they come out with this beautiful game in Syndicate that showcased... What was it, the 1800s? It was the Industrial Revolution, so that would have been around the 1800s, wouldn't it? London Obviously, we had the twins. So I think it was the first one that the first in the mainline series that we could play as a female, if I remember rightly. They brought in some new mechanics into that with grappling hooks and stuff like that. And it was the last one before they completely changed the series and went into the RPG style that was Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla.
Which was let's say divisive for fans of the series.
Yeah.
Some people love the new RPG elements, and some fans of the series don't.
We will get into that later on because we are going to talk about Assassin's Creed Mirage. But that is something I want to talk about. I mean, they did tone down this game a bit on difficulty to try and focus on the story, which I thought was very good. The story, that is. Look, I 100% agree that this belongs on this list. 100% agree. I actually can't wait to go back and play this game and do the playthrough of them all. Because I want to reappreciate this game. I really want to reappreciate this game. And I might actually have to change the order that we play them in just so that I play this before Unity.
Yeah, look, there are so many games too, and each one could take quite a number of hours to finish, particularly some of the more recent ones. This could be months worth of streaming.
I'm actually dreading doing Valhalla. I platinumed Valhalla. It took me 160 odd hours.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I spent nearly 3 hours just getting, I can't remember what the actual bow's called, but like the bow and arrow, like the legendary bow and arrow in that game. I spent hours and hours and hours just sitting there, waiting for the right time in the day to hit this rock with Excalibur, because it's the only sword that will break this rock, and the bow and arrow's underneath the rock, and the sun's got to be in a certain position, and you get it wrong, you got to wait for it all to come back around again. And I tried doing it where you wait, because you can wait out time, and I kept stuffing it up, so I'm like, oh, for God's sake. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting series that we do, or that I do, either or. Next on the list, I believe this belongs here as well. I thoroughly enjoyed this game.
I strongly disagree, and the reason that I strongly disagree is I don't think that this is underrated. I think a lot of gamers consider this to be a great game.
We'll go into it. We'll read what they said, and then we'll discuss it. So, Shadow of the Tomb Raider for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Now, after launching Rise of the Tomb Raider in 2015, which I think is where maybe you're thinking.
No.
Oh, you are thinking this one. Crystal Dynamics passed off the development torch to Eidos Montreal for its sequel. The Shadow of the Tomb Raider delivered a darker, more personal, and extremely violent conclusion to Lara Croft's origin story. Set in Latin America, primarily in my English.
Primarily.
that word, in Peru. The game delivered much of the same stealth and all-out action mixed with traversal. Does that make sense? With traversal we have come to expect from the series.
Yep.
I would have thought with the traversal, but okay. And thought it certainly didn't reinvent the wheel. It was a satisfying way to wrap things up. Of course, there is always still room for another game, despite a lower review scores compared to its predecessor. Shadow of the Tomb Raider provides that the series is anything but dead. Now, I felt like this game didn't do as well.
I don't think it did as well back in the day, but I think it has quite a cult following now, at least in the PC community. That these days I don't think it's underrated anymore. But probably when it came out, I think yes, it probably was underrated in that it didn't sell as well. But
And I think I have a
yeah,
feeling I know why. And I'm just going to look it up. Because it came out in 2018. Holy hell, it was the 12th mainline story in the Tomb Raider series. I thought it was only like the 6th.
No.
Jeez.
You think about it, yeah, there have been a lot of Tomb Raider games.
No, well, for some reason, I thought it says here that it was the game was originally released worldwide for PlayStation 4, Windows, and Xbox One, with Linux, Mac, and Stadia released November the following year. I thought, for some reason, that was an Xbox timed exclusive.
Don't think so, but yeah.
Maybe the DLC was a timed exclusive. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
I do seem to recall, and I may be wrong on this, but I do seem to recall that it was a really really intensive game for the systems at the time.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why it has a bit more of a cult following these days, because the systems that we have now to play on, better PCs or PS5, or maybe the game's been optimized a bit better for PS4 and Xbox One, that it runs a bit better now than it did on release.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if that's why it wasn't quite so popular when it was released. But yeah, I do think this has quite a big cult following nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I remember there being a big push marketing-wise for this game. I feel like it needs to be on the list purely because it was a very excellent game. The story was great. It was a bit darker. It did sort of really build on leaning into how Lara became Lara.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first one was kind of going down that Uncharted route a bit too much.
Yeah.
Whereas this one sort of tried to step away from that and create its own identity.
Yeah.
By kind of, as they say, not reinventing the wheel, but trying something different.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just don't remember a lot of people talking about this game. I don't think I know anybody personally that really played this game.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So maybe it's a 50-50 one. I think for the time, especially when this was written, it probably deserved to be on the list.
Yeah.
And as you say now, maybe not so much.
Mm-hmm.
The next one on the list, I don't believe belongs on here at all.
Well, this is one that we've played together, and didn't particularly enjoy.
No, but it's not our style of game as much.
But I suppose if you were to say that this is one that a lot of gamers would steer clear of, but actually can be a little bit of fun, then maybe you could make an argument for it being underrated. We're speaking of Plants vs Zombies, by the way.
Yeah. Garden Warfare, not the original Plants vs Zombies either. This is their Garden Warfare, which I think is one of many sequels. It came out on PS3, Xbox 360, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. They write here, Electronic Arts and DICE have had mixed results with their first-person shooters this generation, ranging from the excellent Battlefield 1 to the underwhelming Star Wars Battlefront reboot. One game that certainly surprised us, however, was Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare, which made use of DICE's Frostbite engine and was developed by PopCap Games. Yes, we know you're not a fan of Frostbite. Taking the tower defense game and turning it into a team-based third-person multiplayer shooter shouldn't have worked, but the different classes' goofy abilities and a surprisingly engaging progression system helped make it an excellent title that never got enough attention. Playing the Garden Ops defense mode with a friend or battling out against other players never gets old. Now, I disagree there because I felt it got old very quick.
Yeah.
Now, you're not a fan of these types of games.
No, admittedly not. Yeah.
I am. I don't like the Battle Royale style games as much, but I like the team-based battle shooters. Your things like Overwatch and, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is very similar, and I did not enjoy this game. I thought at times it was confusing with the progression system.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I thought it was confusing on how to get into certain modes and what certain modes were. I thought then when we were doing like the battles and stuff like that, again, it got old very quickly. It was confusing how to use certain characters and what certain characters did. And yeah, all round, I just did not enjoy the game at all. In saying that, does it belong on this list? I don't feel it does. Because, what did we play it on PS4?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was one of the monthly games at the time.
Yeah.
And we jumped into it a couple of times with one or two other friends. And even a few months after it being on the free games, there was still people playing that game. It was very easy to find matches.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So I feel like enough people played this that it's not really underrated. I think maybe in this sense they may have got confused between underrated and unpopular.
Mm-hmm.
Because, much like Fortnite, you either love it or hate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Plants vs. Zombies has that same sort of categorization between gamers. People either love it or hate it. There's no kind of in between. And I think because they loved it, and maybe a lot of people that they know don't, they've gone, oh, well, that's really underrated then. I could be wrong, but...
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it should be on this list. Ultimately.
Yeah. The next one. I don't think this belongs on the list as much as a certain other game in this series. But I do believe this belongs on the list. That's Resident Evil Revelations 2. PS3, Xbox 360, PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, Vita, and PC. Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 7 both got plenty of acclaim this generation, but the spin-off horror game Resident Evil Revelations 2 went relatively under the radar in comparison, starring a mix of new and returning characters including Resident Evil 2's Claire Redfield. The game plays like a mix of the original series and the newer, more action-orientated entries. Rather than the doomed ship setting of the previous game, it finds our heroes on a secluded prison island and they go up against some of the most terrifying enemies in the franchise history. Resident Evil Revelations 2 lacks the production values of the more successful main games, but its old school influences make it a must play for horror fans. Yeah, for those reasons, I believe it belongs on this list. I don't think it got anywhere near the love it deserved.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe,
Yeah.
I believe, and I've seen a lot of love for this game recently, Resident Evil 6 should be on this list.
I can't agree with you on that. I didn't enjoy 6.
I know you didn't enjoy 6. It's probably the worst of the mainline games. But it is a very underrated game. I think there's a lot of fun to be had on that game. It tried to do something very different in the Resident Evil series.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you could do it online with friends was big. And I feel like that story... The story lacked in a lot of places, but it also has a lot of hidden gems in that story, and had a lot to offer, I think.
I still think Revelations 2 probably deserves its spot though, because I think that the first Revelations game was not particularly well loved, and it was pushed quite hard.
Yeah.
For being a spin-off, and so I think a lot of people therefore just avoided Revelations 2, and it didn't deserve that because it was a better game. And like if this was a standalone title that didn't have the Resident Evil branding on it, I think you'd think that it was a pretty decent game for its time.
Yeah, I don't know if it would have sold better or worse, though, without the Resident Evil.
I wasn't thinking particularly of sales, just in terms of...
No, I know. But what I'm meaning is, like, because of the lower production value and all of that, it may not have got into as many hands, and may not have even made it onto this list, because a lot of people may not have known about it.
Mm-hmm.
Due to the fact that it didn't have that Resident Evil stamp on it. It may not have even been greenlit, for that matter, without the Resident Evil stamp. So, but I tend to agree. I tend to agree with what you're saying.
Now we are very slowly getting through this list, so we'll have to we'll have to start rattling through a few more.
Yes.
But the next one in the list, I actually disagree with again.
I disagree with it as well,
because I think similar to what you thought about the last one. I don't think this is the most underrated game in this series.
I don't believe it belongs on this series purely on the fact that it sold well.
Mm-hmm. It did.
It was quite popular due to the franchise that it is. And I just thought it was a bad game and a bad concept for that series, considering
I agree with that.
everything else everything that series is supposed to be about. We are, of course, talking of Call of Duty Advanced Warfare on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. So, tell me what you think.
I think there are two games in the Call of Duty franchise that deserve the title of underrated a lot more than Advanced Warfare.
Yeah.
The first one of them, older game in the series, would be World at War.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty underrated. And I also think Black Ops 3 is underrated because nowhere near as many people played Black Ops 3 as compared to the first couple of Black Ops games, as far as I'm aware. I could be wrong on that, but I think it sometimes gets a bit of flack for not being as strong of a title as the other Black Ops games. And when I played its campaign, I actually thought it was really good.
I think
So maybe that's personal opinion, but
I think Black Ops 3 fell away a bit. I don't think the multiplayer was as strong. And I think that's what people had an issue with.
possibly, yeah.
You gotta remember, a lot of Call of Duty players don't play for the story anymore. They only play it for the multiplayer.
That's true. Yeah.
Or the zombies.
World at War had both. It was a great online title and an amazing campaign back in its day.
Yes, I totally agree there. In saying that, we need to talk about the new Modern Warfare at some point. Because I think there's a lot of fun to be had on that game with the zombies. Next on the list, something that we both played a lot of a couple of years ago, and that's The Crew 2. Came out on PS4, Xbox One and PC. I thoroughly enjoyed this game.
I did too, but I still think even now heaps of people still play that game.
I don't believe it belongs on this list.
Yeah, I don't think it's underrated.
I platinumed this game.
I think it's rated probably exactly where it should be.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, I agree. It obviously does try to take on other games like Forza and Horizon and their series. The first game probably lacked a little bit. I think the first one might almost have a claim to being on this list, but I don't think the second one does. The second one, fantastic. Like, obviously dropped the seriousness from the first game, and like you could just have a lot of fun in this game. Builds on Ubisoft's open world style, and go check this game out. I don't think there's anything that we can say that's really going to sell it more than watching a trailer for it.
Yeah, I still think there are a fair number of issues with it as well that stop it from being a truly great game. And so I think it's right kind of where it deserves to be.
Yeah. And obviously the sequel to that, Crew Motorfest, I think has just come out. So next on this list, I don't think you played. I definitely did. And I don't believe it belongs on this list because I thought it was absolute garbage. I got pulled into this game from like the E3 announcements and all the stuff, and I played it and I was like, what the hell is this? That is Rage 2 that came out on PS4, Xbox One and PC. The first Rage game was a very odd game for id Software, in large part because it just felt so safe with its post-apocalyptic setting, brown and grey environments and cookie-cutter combat. For the sequel, no one really asked for. The studio partnered with Avalanche Studios of Mad Max and Just Cause fame, and managed to deliver a completely different type of game, still maintaining the vehicular combat of the original. Rage 2's world is much more colourful and vibrant. Its side missions are more entertaining, and most importantly, its first-person shooting field's incredible. Perhaps its relatively uninteresting story remains its downfall, but a few other games handle the wasting enemies as well as Rage 2. I will give it that the combat was good, but I finished the story and side missions in 9 hours.
Yeah, right.
For a fully priced AAA game.
Yeah, that's not great.
9 hours. And about 6 hours into that, I was getting pretty fucking bored.
Yeah.
Because it felt like the same kind of stuff.
So maybe you think that game actually deserves to be in an overrated list.
Yes. Yes.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it looks fantastic. The story it did tell was okay. The combat was great, but I mean, you spent a lot of time driving across desert with not much else really going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, next on the list, Sunset Overdrive, Xbox One and PC.
But this is a game that I really wanted to play when it was announced, and didn't have an
Yeah,
Xbox to play on. And everything that I have heard and read about Sunset Overdrive was that it was a classic that would have had a lot of fans if it had been released on PlayStation.
yeah,
But because Insomniac weren't really hadn't made Xbox games before this, that it didn't get the attention that it deserved on Xbox. So I think it probably does deserve to be on this list.
yeah. I will agree.
I've heard that it's a huge amount of fun.
Yeah, I heard a lot of that around the time of release. I've heard a lot of that since it was released, and yeah, I still haven't had the time to go pick it up. Maybe it's something we look at doing because
It might be I don't know with this kind of online functions if it would be all that much fun to play anymore. But
no,
yeah,
we can only try. I
yeah,
believe it belongs on this list anyway.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Again, like you said, probably not if it had been released on PlayStation as well. Next on the list, we have Darksiders 3. I don't think this belongs on the list at all.
Right.
I thought this game had huge success, and everybody that played it loved it
Yeah,
and raved about it.
I think you're right. It's tailored to a particular audience, and that audience all loved it. So just because it wasn't particularly mainstream, so to speak, doesn't mean that it's underrated.
I thought this was pretty mainstream. I thought it was pushed
You could be
well.
right. You
I
could be
thought it
right.
was pushed well, marketed well. It still pops up on the store all the time, in games catalogs and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I think it always does well. I've got it downloaded on my hard drive.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever played it myself, but when you've got thousands of games to get through, you got to follow the dopamine with that ADHD. So yeah, I think that's a pretty standard one for probably both of us that doesn't belong on the list. The next one, I remember a little bit about. Oh, getting itchy back.
Yeah, same do I. So do I. I did play a little bit of this, and I wish I had have played more.
Yeah, I don't think I did, and it's kind of got me interested. So maybe it does belong on the list. But then, I mean, you're looking at...
We're talking of Valiant Hearts: The Great War.
Yeah, let us know in the comments what you thought of this, because, yeah, I probably don't want to comment too much on it. But, I
Game
mean,
that kind of pulls on your heartstrings.
yeah. I mean, it was released on PS3, Xbox 360, PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, PC, iOS, and Android. So, I mean, if you're getting released on everything, that makes me think a lot of different people have played it. A lot of... Hang on, didn't it win a few game awards and stuff like that?
It probably did. I think it's one of those story-driven games, though, where a lot of people won't play it because it doesn't look fun and exciting and action-packed. But actually, if you can just spend the time to sit there and play it and be absorbed by its story, you'll have a great time, like reading a great book.
Yeah. So it actually was nominated for 3 awards at the Golden Joysticks in 2014. It was nominated for 2 awards at the 2014 Game Awards, which it won. It also won the Best Video Game at the Annie Awards.
Mm-hmm.
It was then nominated for 4 awards at DICE. Nominated for 2 at South by Southwest. Nominated for 2 at the BAFTAs. And won 1. And then was nominated for 5 more at the National Academy of Video Game Trade Reviewers Awards. So, to me, that doesn't say underrated.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
I think that game got a lot of recognition right there. Maybe the fact that it didn't get into enough hands says that maybe it is a little bit underrated. But I think just by being nominated at all those awards, probably got it into more hands than they expected.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah.
Next, I don't know much about. It does look
No,
like
I don't know anything about the next game.
Does look like the kind of game that I would pick up at 3 o'clock in the morning and play for a couple of hours and then never pick it up again. Blazing Chrome for PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC. It's a 2D 16-bit era style side scroller. I mean, these games are a dime a dozen. So, without knowing more about it, I don't think I can really say too much. I may go pick it up and have a look at it and maybe give an update, but
I suppose it can be underrated pretty easily.
Yeah.
By just being a good-ish game. Because a lot of people wouldn't expect a game like that these days to be any good.
It does say here that it delivers an excellent blend of all-out action, difficult boss battles, and weapon choice to deliver the Contra games game fans really wanted. Not having the Contra name likely means it will not be played by as many people, but it is far better than anything Konami has done with the series for over a decade. So, you know, maybe I'm going to say it belongs on this list because
I'm going to imagine the next one you're going to have a problem with.
Actually, no. I think it belongs on this list.
Okay, fair enough.
We are, of course, talking about No Man's Sky for PS4, Xbox One, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. I think this belongs on this list purely for the fact that it had so much hype, was so disappointing, but the developers are putting so much work to make this game what it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of that bad launch, a lot of people haven't gone and got into this game because they're like, I'm not touching that. Like, look at the original review scores and blah blah. But they've done some great things with this game. Now, I did jump into it about 1.5 2 years ago and didn't like it, but I can see the work that they've put into making this game great for those that do like it.
A similar thing happened with Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah.
That absolutely panned upon release, despite a lot of hype for, you know, a MMO, big MMO in the Final Fantasy universe. And then over the years, it just got update after update, and now it's great.
Yeah.
So now it really is underrated because there are still a lot of people who don't touch it and probably should.
Yeah, I mean the numbers are going up on Final Fantasy, but that's a different conversation. Obviously, No Man's Sky also has PSVR integration as well now. Like, I think in the space of like 5 years, they did so much to this game, like it was just a completely different game.
Hmm.
And yeah, I 100% believe that this game belongs on this list. For what it is now, not for what it was when it was released.
Yep. Yep.
Next on the list is Knack 2. This game belongs on this list.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
I mean, they said on here that the first game became a meme for sheer mediocrity. Mediocrity? Mediocrity.
Mediocrity. Yep.
I thought the first game was good. Not amazing. Like, it felt like a kid's version of sort of your Ratchet and Clank. And it felt...
maybe of some of the PS3 era Ratchet and Clanks, like All for One, for example.
Yeah, like it felt like they were trying to really broaden who the games were for.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd make a game that was kid-based, but adding in some puzzle mechanics and stuff like that, you know, obviously adults would resonate with a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And some, you know, harder stuff to find. And the second one dove even deeper into that. I think that they're probably right having Knack 2 on this list. Because the first one didn't do well, a lot of people didn't pick up the second one.
Mm-hmm.
But again, great game. Especially for kids. They can play it without much frustration. And, you know, if you want that sort of kickback on a Sunday afternoon and relax with a game that isn't too challenging, but will make you think a little bit, and you can have a bit of fun with, maybe go after an easy platinum, pick this game up. Again, this next one's Super Time Force for Xbox 360, PS4, Xbox One, PC, PlayStation Vita, and PC. I don't know much about.
No, I've never played it.
So I'm going to say yes, it belongs on this list. Middle-earth Shadow of War, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. I don't know if this belongs on here.
I don't know either. I actually think maybe the first game belongs on here more, just because the first game was incredible, and even though it did receive a decent amount of recognition, it probably didn't receive the recognition or sales that it deserved.
I think Shadow of Mordor...
Because Shadow of Mordor had, like, groundbreaking mechanics.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, like absolutely new game mechanics that were incredible at the time, and I think the game deserved a bit more recognition than. But I could be wrong.
I thought it did very well, and I've lost where I am because my page crashed. There we are. I thought... Let's just make sure the recording's still going. Yep. I thought the first game did very well. I think it was very highly spoken about. I thought the second one got a lot of marketing. I thought it was probably received okay at launch. But then nobody was talking about it. I can't remember what else came out around that time, so maybe it got eclipsed by something.
Yeah.
I remember Tan was playing it because she loved the first one, so we pre-ordered her the collector's edition. I've still got the big statue that you got with it on our kitchen table. Yeah. So I remember she got that, and I was playing something else at the time that like come out at the same time. You know what I think it was? I reckon Overwatch came out at the same time. I reckon Overwatch came out at the same time. I reckon Overwatch might have eclipsed it. Overwatch is one of the best-selling games of all time.
Hmm.
So maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I kind of agree it belongs on the list. I think it belongs on the list more than the first one, which obviously you're saying the first one probably belongs on there.
I was just a bit unsure. Like when you put it in those terms, that Shadow of War, similar to I suppose that we talked about with like Final Fantasy 14 and with No Man's Sky, that it received a lot of like bad press on launch,
Yeah.
and then kind of morphed into being something better. Then yeah, maybe it
Yeah, and
does.
obviously this received a lot of bad press at launch as well, with the
Mhm.
microtransactions in the
Yeah.
game. So, in saying that as well, big shout out to Troy Baker, who actually directed that game, Shadow of War. So, the next game on the list is The Punisher for PS2, Xbox, and PC. This game was yeah, was up there, much like my pick for the bracket was kind of violent and could do some crazy over the top things in fights.
Hmm.
Made by Volition before they did the Saints Row series. But yeah, I think this was at a time when comic books weren't really big in the gaming world.
Yeah. Apart from the Spider-Man games, but
Yeah, I mean, I think even they weren't. Well, they were only just coming into being, and they were based on the movies, not on the comic
that's
books.
true. That's true.
So, you know, this game is definitely deserving of this list.
Hmm.
Spec Ops: The Line on PS3, Xbox 360, and PC. Now we did play this. We played this a lot.
Yeah. I seem to remember this being pretty good.
I
A long
remember it
time
being
since I played it, but
pretty well too. I don't know. I mean, it says here it didn't sell as well as they'd hoped. But I
I
mean,
think there were a
we
lot of
love the
games.
Spec Ops games.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of games back then in that genre that didn't sell particularly well that were quite good.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So again, I think it probably does deserve its spot.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Like it obviously didn't sell as well as the previous Spec Ops games, but I mean they're always fantastic. And for those that haven't played it, definitely go and give it a playthrough. The next game I'm just going to skip over because I hated this game so much. I still rate it
Yeah.
as one of the worst games I've ever played. And
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it either. I think I put it down after about an hour.
and it won awards. It was highly, highly rated among gamers. So I don't believe it belongs on this list, and not just because I hate it. I'll tell you what it is. It was Mirror's Edge for Xbox 360 and PS3 and PC. And yeah, I'm not going into any more than that. Einhander on PS1, developed by Square before it became Square Enix. I never heard about it.
No, me
So,
neither. Me neither.
looking at what they've said and the picture that they've provided, I'm kind of intrigued. We're going to
Hmm.
see if it's on the classics. But, yeah, I'm just going to straight up say it belongs on this list. Absolutely. Next up, Game Boy Advance is Wario Land 4. I didn't know they'd got to 4 on Wario Land. I thought they stopped at 3.
Yeah, I didn't know either.
The Wario games have always been fun. It says here that they reckon it's one of the Game Boy Advance's best platformers, so we'll take that. Maybe
I think there are a lot of games on the Game Boy Advance that are pretty underrated. I think the Game Boy Advance as a platform for gaming was a little bit underrated. I'm not sure. Maybe in sales, if the Game Boy Advance did better than other Game Boys, it probably did. But there were so many good games.
So many games came out on the Advance because it was almost like a midway console for them between the 64 and the GameCube. So they just pumped out so many games, and it could do so well because it was, quite powerful for its time.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously they released the Game Boy Advance SP with the backlight, and everybody fucking loved that.
Yeah, it was great, and I seem to remember it having stellar battery life.
Oh, unreal!
Yeah.
I'd get like 6, 7, 8 hours out of that easy.
Yeah. Which
with
for,
the
for
light
a handheld, which for a handheld gaming console that was powerful for its day is quite amazing, really.
I mean, I've had mine for nearly 20 years, and the battery still works in it.
Yeah,
crazy. Try and do that with your Nintendo Switch. Yakuza Like a Dragon for PS4, Xbox One, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. I'm going to say this belongs on this list.
I think it probably does. I think it's quite highly rated by gamers, to be honest.
It is.
But it probably still exceeds the recognition that it gets by the industry and by journalists.
I feel like a lot of people didn't pick this up because they might have either been a little bit Yakuza'd out, or they didn't want to play a Yakuza game that wasn't based on the original characters. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I played through it last year or beginning of last year, and it had so many memorable moments and characters, and they've got the whole Like a Dragon series now coming off the back of it. So I think, especially in Japan, I think it did well.
Yeah.
Which obviously, that's where you want it to do well, being a JRPG. I think it didn't do as well in the West as they hoped, but I think, especially obviously in recent times, it's picked up due to the obviously being added to like the game catalogs and Game Pass, and then on top of that, people have seen, oh crap, we've got these new Like a Dragon games coming out. Let's go back to the first one. So I believe it belongs on the list.
Yeah.
But marginally on the list. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with that.
This I also believe belongs on the list. Immortals Phoenix Rising for PS4, Xbox One, PS5, Series X and S, Nintendo Switch and PC. This was a Ubisoft game about the Greek gods, and was kind of their answer to Breath of the Wild. It was a bit more cartoony. I liked that style. I'm not a huge fan of the art style in Breath of the Wild. That's what kind of turns me off that game. I had a lot of fun in this, but it did the Ubisoft thing. You look at the map and there's just icons everywhere.
Yeah.
This didn't sell too great, but there was plans on doing a sequel which just got cancelled. which they were going to lean more into an Elden Ring style.
Right.
And make it a bit more like From Software games mixed with, the styling from the sequel to Breath of the Wild. I forget what it's called.
Oh, yeah, it's slipped my mind too now.
Yeah. I have an excuse. I've got ADHD. This stuff just comes and goes in my brain. You, on the other hand, Mr. Smarty Pants. Look, I believe this belongs on the list. I've been trying to get people to play this game, and for some reason they don't want to, but I had a lot of fun with it. The next one, another game that, flew under the radar that I thought was excellent, The Medium.
Yeah.
On PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Launched in 2021. Borrows elements from Silent Hill and Resident Evil, as it says here. Most notably the animations and atmosphere. But, again, a lot of fun to be had in this game, especially if you like that sort of styling of game. I don't know what else I can say about it, really, other than go check it out. I believe it belongs on this list because it flew under the radar massively. I think 2021, obviously, we were still kind of in the height of COVID. We had... I think it came out around the same time as... what was the one I was looking at before from House Marquee that we talked about? Returnal. Yeah, like there was a few games like that all coming out around the same time. So, yeah. They kind of got overshadowed a little bit. But I thoroughly believe this belongs on the list. Thoroughly believe. Any thoughts from you?
I haven't played it, so can't speak to it. But now that we're at the end of the list, I suppose we should talk about our own kind of underrated games that we think should be on there.
Yeah. Yep. You talk with what you think for a minute.
I'm I'm kind of thinking as well. I have one that
I'm just
comes
turning
to
around
mind
to have a look at my collection.
that I think people could easily disagree with, because it was probably pushed quite a lot at the time.
Yeah.
But I think similar to other games on this list, where they were hyped, released, and thought to not be that great, and then improved over time, and now you look back on them as classics. I think the first Dead Island game was is really underrated.
In saying that, it did do very well at the time, but it still holds up quite well.
Yeah, it sold pretty well, but I think maybe at the time people thought it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, and now you look back on it and it's still. I mean, we replayed it as a group about 2 years ago, and still absolutely loved it, and it hasn't really aged anywhere near as badly as you would think.
No,
for a fairly early PS3 title.
Yeah. I have 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
3 games. Most recent one is going to be Gotham Knights.
Sure.
Gameplay in it does get a bit stale. I understand why people aren't a fan. They were wanting a successor to the Arkham series. But, I mean, I thought that game offered a hell of a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a lot that you could do with that game. I thought it was a fun platinum to get. It wasn't too hard, wasn't too easy. the different characters offering different animations, the fact that you could have friends travelling in and out as you pleased, or other people just travelling in and out. I think a lot of people gave that game a lot of stick for the opening 10, 15, maybe even half an hour of that game, without actually giving it the full chance.
Sure.
Now, my next one is a PlayStation portable game that sold quite well, that I only recently found out had a sequel.
Yeah, right.
And that's a game called Pursuit Force. The things you could
Yep.
do on that game on a PlayStation Portable were unreal.
Mm-hmm.
So you're playing as a cop that drives along in his car trying to shoot down enemy cars in a certain amount of time and space. You can jump out of your car and onto the enemy cars and shoot them and then take over their cars and continue going.
Yeah, right.
Doing that on a PlayStation Portable. The PlayStation Portable came out with the PS2.
Mm-hmm.
That's how old that is. You don't even fully get those mechanics in games today.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Like, I thought that game was unreal. I think it sold well in America, but in Europe, where I was at the time, and in Australia, didn't do as well. Those games are also on the PlayStation Classics catalogue, so go check them out. My next one might be controversial.
Yeah, go on.
Final Fantasy VIII. I think Final Fantasy VII gets so much love that it overshadows Final Fantasy VIII.
Okay, that's the direction I thought you'd take that in.
And yet Final Fantasy VIII offers, I believe, so much more. Graphically, story-wise, gameplay-wise, options in combat.
You could argue that 10 does as well.
No, you see, I think a lot of people rate 10 higher than 8 as well. And don't get me wrong, okay. I love 10. Like, I've gone back and played 10 recently.
Yeah.
On the Switch and PlayStation. I thoroughly love 10. But, I mean, you got to remember as well, 10 got its sequel, 10-2.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, has been remastered properly and looks fantastic on the Switch and PlayStation 5. Final Fantasy VIII's remaster was basically them just porting it.
Yeah, yeah. To be fair, they did that with 7 before they did a proper remake.
Yeah, but those 3 games are probably the best in the series, in the franchise. And I feel the other 2 outshine 8. And 8, I think, offers just that little bit, maybe not as much in terms of depth as 10 in what you can do, but they were released on different generations.
Yeah.
But go check out Final Fantasy VIII. Like, it's unreal. Absolutely unreal.
I have one more.
So do I. But
okay.
I'll let you go first.
This one, I'm going to add because there are 3 games from this producer that are fairly major titles, I suppose, and all in the same genre, although they're not. None of them are sequels to the other, but they're all very similar. So the producer I'm talking about is Quantic Dream. And I think while Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human are both held up as really great games in their genre, I think Beyond Two Souls is always overlooked. And while it maybe isn't quite as strong a title as the other 2, I I think it's actually a really good game, personally, and this could just be personal love for that game that other people don't agree with. But go on, tell me your thoughts.
I feel that Beyond Two Souls is more universally loved than the other two games combined.
Really?
Yeah. People have been screaming out for a sequel to Beyond Two Souls.
I haven't
For
I haven't
years.
seen any of that.
For years they've been crying out for it.
Yeah, right.
That they want either a remake or this or, a sequel, blah, blah, blah.
I do think the fact that Heavy Rain got a re-release, a port
Yep.
to the newer consoles, and Beyond Two Souls didn't, does indicate that at least the developer considered Heavy Rain to be the more popular of the two.
Yeah. Look. I can't really agree with you, but I'm just flicking through and having a look at. Like, it won a lot of awards and was nominated for a lot of awards Beyond Two Souls.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But I mean, I kind of agree. It is underrated. I think all of those games are underrated, to be honest, from Quantic Dream.
Yeah, I think even Detroit is, and that was probably the
a lot of people
highest selling game of that they've made. But
I think
that's a bit underrated.
I think a lot of people gave that game a lot of unnecessary stick.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinions, really, aren't they? So mine takes us into our bracket. So what we'll do this week is we'll go into the bracket. I'll talk about mine, still talk about his, and then we'll do the honourable mentions. Just because it works out better. So mine that I believe belongs on this list, and my pick for this week, is a game called Manhunt. And this game, I think, came out when I was like 12 or... no, it would have been older than that. Like 15 or 16. And was banned in the UK. Some people managed to get hands on copies. It was banned in Australia. I think it ended up getting banned in the US. And this game was basically based on snuff films. Like, it's just crazy the thing you could do in the 20 levels. The kills that you could make happen and all that sort of stuff. But I think because of it being banned, it gained some recognition. But then because it was banned, not a lot of people got their hands on this game.
Mm-hmm.
Go find it. Go give it some love. Because, my God, if you love horror games, this is the one to go for. Nobody has done or replicated what this game could do for a long, long time. So, yeah. I believe it belongs on that list, and I believe it belongs on our list. So, your choice.
I'm just gonna give a shout out to one of the honourable mentions, which I also think is underrated, and I had a hard time not choosing this as my pick for this week, and that's Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. Now, if any of you have played the Jurassic World Evolution games, Jurassic Park Operation Genesis from 2003 was the precursor to that. That was essentially everything that those games is, just with graphics from 2003.
Yeah, pretty much. And not as many dinosaurs.
It was great. Yeah. And if you love park building strategy games, I think it is right up there with Zoo Tycoon. It was excellent in its day. It was also on PlayStation and Xbox, I believe, and not just on PC,
Yeah.
which is pretty incredible for a game like that of that era.
I think a few of
So
those
yeah,
park builders were on Xbox purely for the
yeah,
the
the
way
roller coaster tycoon and stuff like
purely the
that.
way that it was set up with DirectX and all that. But yeah,
Yeah.
continue.
So yeah, I think that deserves a mention as being an underrated game, but it's not my pick for the bracket this week. My pick for the bracket is, I think, our first wrestling game
I
on the
reckon it
bracket,
is
and
too.
that is SmackDown: Here Comes the Pain, which is probably my favorite of all of the wrestling games that have been ever released. If not, it would be in the top 2 or 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'd be in mine as well. I mean, I've had every single PlayStation wrestling game from that series of lines, despite all the name changes from SmackDown to SmackDown versus Raw to 2K.
Oh, it was just WWE for a couple of years,
Yeah, it was
and then
just
it was
WWE for a couple of years.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like I've owned every single one of them. I have a lot of fun on those games. For many, many years, I'd just create you and me on those games and would just work our way to becoming tag champions.
Yeah.
And then I'd kick you to the curb and go after the world title while you went and picked up the Intercontinental title. And then I'd beat you for that as well. We always made some weird choices with the clothing we put on those characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm surprised we haven't had another wrestling game as of yet, but I think this is probably up there, as you said, definitely a top 3, if not the best.
I think a lot of fans of the series would say that Here Comes the Pain is their favorite as well.
Yeah, that or I think the previous year's one, which I think was Know Your Role. Was it Know Your Role?
I think it might have been.
I have got it written on here. No, I just wrote down SmackDown 4 because I'm an idiot. But yeah, so all right, the honourable mentions were SimCity 4, Devil May Cry 2, as Stu spoke about before, Jurassic Park Operation Genesis, Midnight Club 2, EVE Online, Silent Hill 3, Counter-Strike. We are going to get a lot of stick for this one. The Simpsons Hit and Run.
Yeah.
SSX 3, Time Crisis 3, Tony Hawk's Underground, True Crime Streets of LA, which I had a lot of fun playing, by the way. Definitely go check that one out. Probably another one that belongs on that list, to be honest. Ratchet and Clank Going Commando, Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, Need for Speed Underground, and Star Wars The Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah, there are 2 games in there, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and Simpsons Hit and Run, that I think easily could be games that we get as our final wild cards to replace a few of the weaker picks in the bracket.
There's a few in that list.
So don't fret too much if you think it's an absolute travesty that we haven't included one of those games.
You know,
they might yet be included.
I've actually just come up with an idea of what to do with the wild cards.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll talk about that off air. I was going to say something, I forgot what it was. Oh, I know what it was. I already know what my pick is for next year, and I haven't even looked at what games came out in 2004. And if anybody knows me, they should already know what it is. And on that note, we're going to leave it there. Adios.
See you later.